It begins with unusual anxiety about normal activities or locales. Then it evolves into increasingly damaging avoidance behaviors, perhaps fear to use public transportation, unwillingness to go to work, or the inability to ply the aisles of one's favorite grocery store. Untreated, it ultimately leads to literal self-imprisonment and fear of leaving the home. While the intellect certainly suffers, there are physical symptoms as well. I'm here with Blaise Dismer, a recovering agoraphobic and an authority on the disease. Blaise, what is your definition of agoraphobia, which I believe can also be referred to as panic attacks or anxiety disorder?
Well, yes, John. It actually falls under the rubric of anxiety disorders. And basically, agoraphobia is a disorder that involves a person's fear of leaving a safe place, such as a home or an apartment, because they are afraid that they will have panic attacks and can't escape to safety.
What are the symptoms of the condition?
Well, the symptoms are really a great amount of generalized anxiety. One is anxious in the home all the time. They have profuse sweating, rapid heartbeat, sometimes what we call rubbery knees, can be dizziness, stomach aches, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Is it fairly common? How common is this disease?
It's more common than you would probably think. I think the most conservative statistic that I've heard is 2.2% of the population at any given time suffers, but there are estimates that are quite a bit higher than that.
Wow, so it's fairly pervasive. That's interesting. You are, or were, an agoraphobia victim. Can you kind of describe your experience for us?
Yeah, basically it starts with one's first panic attack. A panic attack is just an overwhelming combination of the symptoms that I described, the physical symptoms, as well as some thoughts that are very unusual, such as I may be going crazy or I may be having a heart attack. And what follows for a minority of people, but a significant number still, is they continue to have panic attacks and avoidance behaviors build up, as you mentioned, so that they're afraid to leave their homes.
Interesting. And I mentioned earlier you actually were a victim of the disease earlier in life. How did you recover? What were the steps that got you back into the mainstream?
Well, speaking of the steps, I'm reminded of the movie What About Bob that Bill Murray was in. Baby steps, a lot of baby steps that had to do with cognitive things, changing my thoughts, and most importantly, changing my behaviors, going outside of the home, starting to face the things that I was afraid of despite the fear, not because it was gone.
So you deal with the symptoms rather than ignore them. Interesting. Where can a victim or a family member turn?
Well, there are a number of books at any bookstore. There are a number of excellent sites. Two of my favorites, the Anxiety Disorder Association of America has a site, adaa.org, and another, paniccure.com. Those are both excellent resources.
Excellent. I know beyond just recovering the disease, you've decided to try to help other people who are similarly afflicted. What about the advisory or consulting role you've undertaken? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, John, I guess a big part of that is my speaking engagements. I speak to various groups. I spoke last year at the Anxiety Disorders Association of America to a group of folks there. I'm involved in some therapy. I've done therapy for indigent folks who needed help with that. Been involved. I'm a board member of Triumph Over Panic out of California. So those are some of the ways I try to help.
And I guess last but not least, probably most dear to your heart in terms of resources for people, is your newly published book, which I believe garnered some awards.
Oh, thank you. The book has been fairly well received so far. It's about how I beat agoraphobia, and it's called Homebound No More. It is available through Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com, and yes, it received the Editor's Award for my universe.
Excellent. Agoraphobia, menacing but manageable. We're here again with Blaise Dismer, and this is John Powers reporting for Open for Business.